things.
Man, listen, you see, really, to me, okay, to me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky, and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean, blinded by it, or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, now that, my friend, is very hard to do, and you have to train. You have to keep your reflexes so that when you want it, it's there. When you want to move, you're moving. And when you move, you are determined to move. Not taking 1 inch, not anything less than that. If I want to punch, I'm going to do it, man, and I'm going to do it, you see. So, I mean, so that is the type of thing you have to train yourself into it, to become one with the... You think?
Yeah, this is very...
Today, being the 20th of July 2014, marks the 41st anniversary of the untimely death of one Legion Fun, more commonly known to us as Bruce Lee. Martial arts expert, international film star, fight choreographer, teacher, stuntman, philosopher, father, director, icon. He was all of these things. And with a man of his legendary status, there are of course an itinerary of brilliant biographies and eulogies already made with far more insight than I can offer, so I'm not making a retrospective on his life in this video. I would highly recommend Fighting Spirit by Bruce Thomas or his widow Linda Lee Cadwell's The Life and Tragic Death of Bruce Lee as essential readings from that perspective. I really wanted to make a video on my biggest role model when growing up, although up until doing research for this video I hadn't watched one of his films for about 4 years. I hadn't read his philosophies for 7 years, and I hadn't practiced any form of martial arts for 8 years. One reason why his influence still resonates with me though is down to his approaches to training, which in the early 1970s was so far ahead of its time and still practiced in many different guises today. How could a man who was no bigger than 5'7" and weighed approximately 10 stone become one of the fittest men on the planet and one of the greatest ever martial artists? This question in particular has always fascinated me from a genetic standpoint, and I always use Bruce Lee's journey as a strong motivational tool for my clients when they become dubious of the efficacy of training hard, eating well, and getting sufficient rest in. He was a man who was willing to push himself beyond all reasonable plateaus and physically apply his theories. As one of his most famous quotes tells us, "Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do."
You have to, you see, because, I mean, that is the expression of the human body. I mean, everything, I mean, you know, not just the hand. And when you're talking about combat, well, I mean, if it is a sport, now you're talking about something else. You have regulations, you have rules. But when you're talking about fighting as it is,
no rules.
With no rules,
not real fighting,
well then, baby, you better train every part of your body.
Getting insight into how Bruce Lee achieved his amazing physique and explosive power relies on a heavy amount of anecdotal evidence and conjecture. We do not know whether this was because Bruce Lee was particularly reticent about divulging the information on his training, or whether written record was just something he didn't find particularly vital. What we do know is the spark which served as the catalyst behind him radically changing his approach to fitness and striving to be the best he could be. By 1965, Bruce Lee was running a successful martial arts school in Oakland. One must remember that in 1965, with the exception of judo and karate taught to US Armed Forces, the idea of a Chinese person teaching Caucasians the centuries-old secrets of Kung Fu et al. Was seen as taboo. The irony being that in a nation where acceptance of foreigners was unprogressive, the people who were attempting to censor the most were the very same people being subjugated themselves.
You still think of yourself Chinese, or do you ever think of yourself as North American?
You know what I want to think of myself? As a human being. Because, I mean, I don't want to sound like, you know, as Confucius say, but under the sky, under the heaven, man, there is but one family. It just so happened, man, that people are different.
One of these schools in question sent a representative to Bruce Lee's school in Oakland, ordering him to stop training martial arts to non-Chinese people. Long story short, Bruce Lee refused their request, stating that all humans have the right to express themselves via the act of martial arts, regardless of race. This set up an actual fight between the two schools, where Bruce would go against a representative of the rival, a man by the name of Wong Jack Man, with the pledge that if he lost the fight he would close his school and stop teaching to non-Chinese. Although Bruce ultimately won the fight, it had consisted of 3 minutes of him essentially running around in a circle trying to chase Wong Jack Man and repeatedly punching him in the back of the head until he gave up. Bruce Lee did not feel like a winner. To him, what should have taken 20 seconds with little effort took 3 minutes and a lot of heavy breathing afterwards. He later told his friend James Lee that he wanted to optimise his martial arts and training methods and embarked on an obsessive quest to be fitter than anybody thought possible. As I already mentioned, much of the information we have about Bruce Lee's training is second-hand evidence from his students and friends. Bruce himself wrote extensive notes on the philosophies of training, which was combined and published in the book The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, but most of it was technical and quite broad in scope. For example, on a section about power he would write, "The athlete who is building muscles through weight training should be very sure to work adequately on speed and flexibility at the same time. Combined with adequate speed, flexibility and endurance, high levels of strength lead to excellence in most sports. In combat, without prior attributes, a strong man will be like the bull with its colossal strength futilely pursuing the matador, or like a low-geared truck chasing a rabbit." He also said, "To appropriately incorporate momentum with mechanical advantage, neural impulses are sent to the working muscle to bring a sufficient number of fibres into action at precisely the right time, while impulses to the antagonistic muscles are reduced to lessen the resistance, all acting to improve efficiency and to make the best use of available power." On balance, he had this to say: "In general, for athletic contests, a preparatory stance will include a coiled or semi-crouched posture and a lowered forward centre of gravity. With the bending of the forward knee, the centre of gravity moves forward a little. For general readiness, the lead heel usually remains just touching the ground even after the knees bend. Slight ground contact of the heel aids in balance and decreases tension." He would have these rational and well thought out views on a number of abilities, such as endurance, form, economy of motion, and timing. This shows us that Bruce Lee was indeed very thoughtful about the reasons and best practices for physical development, that much can be sure. Again, remember that Lee died in 1973, so there was an 8-year period in which he would collate all of the fitness information he could gather and apply these to his own training. Bertrand Russell best sums up the type of research Bruce Lee was undertaking, just like that of the pre-Socratic philosophers, one of disinterested effort. It allowed a degree of intellectual flexibility which post-Socratic empiricism certainly lacks. In modern society, this is a revolutionary way of looking at oneself, scrapping the steps of method we are currently used to in scientific inquiry and instead using just a plinth of experience. This experience being seen as a machine capable of applying what is useful and rejecting what is useless. The same philosophies led to him devising Jeet Kune Do. He best explained physical development not as gaining and growing, but more like a sculptor's slab of stone, in which he would chip away at the useless parts, revealing a true and efficient form. You can see that influence in contemporary approaches to training, particularly from self-proclaimed life coaches, who often make their clients understand their untapped potential in the sense of it all being there already within oneself. The layer in question just needs to be discovered through a little mental and physical boring.
Can you break 5 or 6 pieces of wood with your hand or your foot?
I'll probably break my hand and foot.
As his previous quote has explained, however, knowing is not enough. Bruce Lee obviously applied this knowledge. The question is how. What exercises did he do? How often did he train per week? How many sets did he perform? How many reps? Did he integrate cardio into his training? The details are sketchy, but as alluded to in that previous clip, Bruce Lee was no preening fitness model or circus monkey. His body was to go, not show. One famous story goes that Bruce Lee and one of his students, Dan Inosanto, were walking past the famous dungeon gym in Santa Monica when a huge bodybuilder walked out. "Man, look at the arms on that guy," exclaimed Inosanto. "Yeah, he's big, but is he powerful?" came the unimpressed response from Lee. The inherent beauty of that response is precisely what I think in contemporary gym environments when I see your typical musclehead doing his Xerox hypertrophy program. Could they even complete a 5k run? Are they able to even touch their toes? The term functional training has become so anodyne in our industry, but I rarely see function. Whether having the strength and balance to perform 2-finger push-ups or knock a man down by punching him from the distance of only 1 inch, when Bruce Lee trained, he trained for a purpose, usually integrating strength and speed in that training.
I'm saying, actually, you see, I mean, it's a combination of both. I mean, here it is the natural instinct, and here is control. You are to combine the two in harmony. Not, if you have one to the extreme, you will be very unscientific. If you have another to the extreme, you become all of a sudden a mechanical man, no longer a human being. So it is a successful combination of both. So therefore,
Bruce Lee held the belief that working out and training without thought didn't constitute as workout. The mind and body are constantly working in harmony with one another, and the training session without one was as fruitless as not training at all. He was a monist in this sense. He was Thomas Aquinas with muscles. With the information we know about his belief in mental and physical harmony, it would be fair to deduce that he would have been more about the emotional feeling of the mind at that point in time of an exercise, not concerned with the rigmarole of mental preparation before a physical act. This would make him a strong critic of a particular branch of sports science held extremely popular today, that being motivational psychology. Reaching on from this, Bruce Lee would almost certainly have undertaken his warm-ups either very casually or not at all, with little emphasis on preparing himself. In basic terms, if Bruce Lee were doing a hypertrophy program of 4 sets of 8 reps, he'd likely have only done 1 warm-up set just to judge the ideal weight to use. If you wish to train as Bruce did, every rep of every set would need to be felt, thought about and contemplated upon. In other words, nothing but 100%. This 100% he would express in his gym notes as INF, meaning infinity. This suggests that he was prepared to run until he could run no more and go to failure on every set of resistance training. Quite how effective this approach would be at increasing maximal strength is flimsy at best, but we know that he did at least attempt this with Olympic type lifts, particularly the clean. He was CrossFit before CrossFit was a conception. But this intensity was something he expected from his students also. A client of his, Sterling Silliphant, recalls how once he was forced to push way beyond his usual threshold, and during post-exercise recovery tells Bruce, "Why the hell did you push me like that? You could have killed me." The reply was classic Bruce. "Then you might as well be dead. Seriously, if you put limits on yourself and what you can do, physical or anything else, it will spread into the rest of your life. It will spread into your work, into your morality, into your entire being. There are no limits, only plateaus. But you must not stay there, you must go beyond them. If it kills you, it kills you. A man must constantly exceed his level." Did anybody just say Nietzsche and Übermensch? However, Bruce Lee was absolutely as critical of himself as he was of anything or anyone else. And with his Immanuel Kant-like belief in human development, the paradox would not be lost on him that the contempt for what came before would equally apply to him in the future. As he explains in The Game of Death through his fight with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, adaptation and modification is paramount. Bruce Lee would not have stuck to the same training methods and philosophies for very long, and he would have been a firm believer in periodisation and cross-training. Bruce was very aware of the importance of building the individual components of the body most necessary to be an effective fighter and martial artist. I do not profess to train clients combative arts, but all of the trusted colleagues of mine who do all say exactly the same thing. Bruce Lee's physique was built, by him and him alone, for fighting. He had reasons for developing everything he developed. On his abdominals he says, "My strength comes from the abdomen. It's the centre of gravity and the source of real power." Take a glance at that area and you know immediately he believes that before you even inquire about the exercise he does. A lat spread like a damn cobra head. Every sinew and muscle on display from the arms and shoulders is observational evidence of a man of marble, chiseled to perfection. A final note on the training method Bruce Lee was a practitioner of was peripheral heart action, or PHA for short. The brilliant physiologist and another personal hero of mine, Dr. Arthur Steinhaus, developed incredible research which highlighted the benefits of a continuous circulation of the blood, which we have now modified today as circuit training. For Bruce, he would implement PHA, or circuit training, with the same all-encompassing purpose for a single rep lift. Everything has to be spot on, from the weight to the breathing to the technical standard of rep 20 being as excellent as rep 1. If you're watching this as a fitness professional, you may say, well, that's just good practice and common sense. Yes, it is, but it goes back to applying what you know. Bruce was the master at applying. Perhaps a man can apply too much. Perhaps a man can do too much. Just how does a man dubbed the fittest on the planet die at the age of just 32? The official coroner's verdict was death from a cerebral edema caused by a reaction found in compounds within the painkiller Equagesic. While I would hold no dispute over that, I would make a case that he just did too much. As we have covered, his training was insane to the majority. He was also a huge international star with all the stresses that accompany that. He had a family to support. He was still teaching his martial arts to his most trusted students. He wasn't just starring in his films, he was performing and choreographing all the fight scenes. He was the director, the producer, and sometimes even the musician for the opening credits. He wanted to take control of every facet of his life. Control is power, and power corrupts. In this case, it corrupted him physically. Returning to the now prophetic claim to Sterling Siliphant, if it kills you, it kills you. How can I sum up Bruce Lee's fitness philosophies and approaches in a pithy conclusion? I can't. I don't think it's possible, which is why his life is still analysed and scrutinised to this day. He continues to inspire the martial arts, remains an indelible image on the silver screen, and is emulated and parodied in computer games. For me, his progressive, advanced and intense applications of training and the philosophies of training are what make him remain a true icon to this day. It seems appropriate that being so many different things to so many different people makes him sort of shapeless, formless, like water.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Like that.
You are watching a master at work.
Stepping live in the place, smacking blood out his face. It's the principle, don't get it wrong. What I do to eat is nothing in comparison to what I do to keep self upright and exact. Spray the Mac if I have to, defend the castle. Sling lasso, roping them till he recoup. Pass the keys to the coupe. It's cute for the words to scoot off. 95 North, cut from the cloth of king who bears struggle. Endless lifeline, theology of time. Move when I made the motion to the mic to recite the dart that I had written. Light existed in the darkness, instant gratification. How far can you travel to Mike's Spa?
Water is the softest substance in the world, but yet it can penetrate the hardest rock or anything, granite, you name it. Water also is insubstantial. By that I mean you cannot grasp hold of it. You cannot punch it and hurt it.
Yeah. See the godlike gleam so bright I gave birth to, that you attract to. Heart so fuller, make you wanna pull your trigger and get rid of. Shiny ball militant head like Lou Gossett. He's walking with the shining lamp of knowledge. Glory be the Lord with the justice sword. Supreme being all I see in. Radiant sun, imperishable absolute. Y'all salute. Approximately 3 mil. Bodies like an empty vessels I must fill. Check where I came from. Any God son or Mason is my son. English C lesson #1 for the dumb. If he ain't true a lemon son, then I never heard of one. Back your gun, 101, come and get some.
Water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Yo, I thought the sign read no colors allowed. Well, how then? Give me a few. Just listen. Instead of wasting time trying to grab them back, the dominant magnetic will always attract the underlight called to him to strive to be. Now Eminem, for example, just another sample of your worst nightmare coming back at you, so beautifully designed. The patience of time to see everything that has been always will be. Now figure out the riddle, the never-ending cycle, born in itself, back into the circle. I'm thankful for the blessing, testing of the lessons, answers and questions, trials and tribulations that was set upon me. It's hard for some to see, but it's clear as day to me.
Be water, my friend.